Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Cybersecurity that Outperforms, Impacts Business, and Drives Revenue, ARMOR Total Economic Impact webinar featuring Forrester. I'm Ryan Smith, the Vice President of Product for here at ARMOR and the host for today's webinar. Before we get started, I'd like to cover off on a few housekeeping tips. All attendees are currently on mute and will remain so throughout the duration of our webinar. Please use the chat window to inform us of any audio or technical issues that you experience. If there are initial sound issues, we do recommend calling in via phone instead of the audio through your computer as an initial troubleshooting step, but please do let us know if you have any additional issues. At the end of the presentation, we will take some questions. Please use the question feature of GoToWebinar to ask about any of the topics being discussed, and we will handle those at the end. Today's webinar is being recorded, and a link to an edited version, as well as the full report, will be sent to all attendees post today's event. With us today, I have David Park, a senior consultant and offering lead at Forrester, as well as Dr. Chase Cunningham, the vice president and principal analyst at Forrester. David, Chase, thank you for joining me today. Can everyone introduce themselves to our audience and share a little more about your roles?
Sure, so I'll go first. I'm on the security and risk team at Forrester. Primarily, I cover zero trust. I do a little bit of work in artificial intelligence and machine learning, but really looking a lot into the move to the cloud, how this market is evolving in that space, and then how we apply strategy to it. And I think that there's interesting results that came back from the study specifically around kind of how that cloud transition can be more effective based on the application of technology specific to the problem.
Excellent, appreciate that. David?
Hi, Ryan, thanks so much. David Park here. So I work in the Total Economic Impact Group, and we work to quantify the impact of many different kinds of technology investments across different domains, including, of course, cybersecurity. So I led the research here on the total economic impact of ARMOR Anywhere. So looking forward to speaking to this later today.
Appreciate it. Thank you both once again for joining us. So that leads us into a good segue as to what we'll actually be talking about today. And we will start with the brief introduction that we have today. I will give a brief introduction into ARMOR Anywhere. Who is ARMOR? What is the product that we actually provide and was studied in this? And then I'm going to turn it over to Forrester to cover off on the main meat, which is today's topic, cybersecurity that outperforms, impacts business, and drives revenue, which is based on the total economic impact research that Forrester did. The analysts will talk about the current cybersecurity landscape, give a market outlook and a trend analysis, and discuss the results of the recent study, examining the benefits, cost, and return on investment of ARMOR Anywhere using Forrester's total economic impact framework. With that being said, let's dive really quickly into an ARMOR Anywhere overview before we get to the meat of today's webinar. ARMOR Anywhere is a threat detection and response platform that provides compliance capabilities for your applications and data wherever they reside. So whether you are co-located in one of ARMOR's data centers using one of the hyperscale environments such as AWS, Azure, GCP, or in some hybrid mix of all of those environments, ARMOR Anywhere's platform is ultimately providing detection capabilities and time to response for security and compliance vulnerabilities within those environments. And that provides a cost-effective security protection that's purpose-built for the cloud and gives you a single pane of glass into your various environments, which is important to that cloud journey that Dr. Cunningham was referencing in his introduction. And as part of what contributes to the total economic impact of ARMOR is the ability to use a singular security and compliance platform across your various environments. And whether that is deploying that platform in minutes so it can be used for protection and detection capabilities, or some of the compliance and audit ready controls it provides The platform has a combination of tools, capabilities, security operations center, eyes on glass, and extended support operations that make up that platform. The platform works in the following manner, which is Armor has built a platform to simplify how security teams and GRC teams can provide security and compliance at scale within their enterprise environment. And we know this is a challenge for many of our customers because in a world of infinite budgets, infinite tools, we can go find any number of technologies to solve the different point problems that we're experiencing with our enterprise. But what the challenge is when you're implementing any security or compliance technology, it's not in the technology itself and what it's able to perform for you, but it's in all of the operational things that go with supporting that technology. So how do you install and configure those sensors or tools at scale across a hybrid environment? How do you push policy down to those sensors once those sensors are already deployed? How do you gather data intelligence from other aspects of your network, whether it comes from the security services you get from Armor, your cloud environment itself, like CloudTrail, GuardDuty, Security Hub, or third-party sources such as firewalls? How do we take all of this context that the industry has built up in terms of these great tools and make it actionable for companies and make sure that these tools don't just sit on the shelf, but you're actually able to leverage the great security technologies out there to get to certain security or compliance outcomes? So Armor brings all of this data back into its data lake and exposes all of that security telemetry to its customers in a way that allows them to focus on what truly matters. So we parse the data, add our threat intelligence, add enrichment for our security teams, so that by the time that event and incident are correlated and in the inbox of your security teams, we've already done that initial event triaging, the context gathering, the correlation of that data through a SIM technology, and we are actioning that data to get to an incident response outcome through either playbook orchestration with our SOAR or countermeasures. This entire platform is consumable, like I said, through a single pane of glass, which allows you to have visibility into your security and compliance outcomes across your hybrid environment. However, it is also all API driven. So if you want to integrate the platform into your existing workflows, you're able to do that as well. So a lot of the things that were covered in this study were that use case of the total cost of ownership as it relates to managing all of these pieces of a security operations program. But I won't steal too much of Forrester's thunder because I know that's the meat of their research and analysis here. But we wanted to give a little insight into the Armor platform and all of the additional capabilities that you get with the platform, whether it is protection capabilities such as FIM, IDS, IPS, AV services, or it is how that data gets actioned on and operationalized within an incident response framework. That's ultimately some of the value that Armor provides based on how it's architected its solution. And for us, it is about making sense of data. So how do we aggregate, normalize, correlate, detect, and respond to telemetry within your environment, whether that is security services that you buy through us or security services that you already have and are leveraging within your programs today. With that being said, I want to turn it over to Dr. Chase and David to talk about the market here initially and dive into the heart of today's presentation. So Dr. Chase, David, once again, thank you for joining me today, and over to you for the market overview.
Great, thank you very much for having me. Kind of weird to start off a market overview with slides like this, but just for the perspective of kind of where we are and the things have been as kind of nuts as they can be. 2020 baboons learned how to use chainsaws. I mean, it doesn't get much crazier than that. And I think we'll unfortunately continue to see a lot of change going on in this space that is just as unwieldy and strange as the fact that these primates have learned to leverage technology to take on the humans in the space. And if you're familiar with the Cabin in the Woods movie, I'm pretty sure the guys down there somewhere had this on their betting board. Let's go to the next slide. It's not news to everybody. Everything is in a state of turmoil. Lots of things are changing. If South Park is saying it, I think it's pretty much a given. But we're in a space where things are kind of rough. However, there is a way to get towards a better state of affairs in the market, and that's kind of where we're going to get into with the use of this study here. Next slide, please. Friday, March 13th of 2020, basically was what I like to call Zero Trust Day. And what we mean by that is that's the day that everyone was kind of told to go home. We all were essentially just, zombified and sent shuffling out of the perimeter and marched our way back to the house to do work remotely. Now, what that means in the broad terms of the market is we are all way outside the bounds of the perimeter, which is okay. We can live there. But the reality is we're going to be using more cloud, more infrastructure, more dispersed stuff. All of our information, all of our technology, all of our data is now reliant on connectivity and information traversing these globally distributed infrastructures. And this is a place where we have to be very careful. Next slide, please. We had to survive from March 13th on, which we've done. We've kind of moved past the initial phase of putting a Band-Aid on a bleeding artery, and we've gotten to the next step of we need to invest in this technology, this evolution. And while things are bad and a little bit different and we've had to adapt, really what we're sitting in front of is what I like to call a crisis-opportunity. Yes, it's a crisis. However, there's a massive opportunity to also innovate, to leverage new technologies, to move into a more secure paradigm. And what we're getting from cloud providers that have these types of technologies and capabilities that enable a secure move is a move into that infrastructure and into that next step. We're not just going to have to continue to run because eventually you get tired of running from the horde. We can get towards a place where we have moved into that opportunity phase of the crisis-opportunity. And that's where we're getting with the application of intelligent technologies into these infrastructures, which will benefit us in the far end of this crisis-opportunity. Next slide, please. We're all way outside of that perimeter. The point here really is to take away is that we've moved past the old paradigm. 89% of the organizations that we talk to say we have to basically change the way that we approach security writ large. Everything is moving into cloud. Everything is more distributed, more dispersed, more mobile. We are all so far outside the bounds of that old corporate infrastructure that we can't think that we can continue to apply the same practices and paradigms that we had when we had sort of a high walled garden that we felt like we could contain and control. The fact that we are moving into this model and we are leveraging these new technologies and capabilities means that it's intelligent for us to apply different approaches to it and to leverage things that are intrinsic to that environment from the providers themselves. So even though we're all way outside of the perimeter, if we're doing this correctly, we're sitting up on the hill and seeing where things are going wrong, and we know where our walled garden was, and we can kind of maneuver around that and continue to benefit as we evolve going forward. Next slide. We're all on our own though. This is not going to be something where the government is going to come help you. The FBI is not going to come show up at your door. If they do, you've probably done something that you don't want them there for. We're in a space where we've got to do this on our own. We've got to at least have a plan, and we've got to have a methodology, and we've got to realize that we need to be able to justify the benefits of this move to get into those more optimal spaces, which are cloud infrastructures, which are things that are provided by folks that actually will take care of our security for us. Since March 2020, attacks on federal systems are up 700%. The government is busy. They don't have the time to come and take care of us, those of us that are in small and mid-sized enterprise or regular sized enterprise. It is incumbent upon us to have a plan, a strategy, and to be able to realize the benefits from technology providers that are aligned with our ultimate outcome so that we can move into this more secure infrastructure state. IP blocks go up, phishing continues to go up. Everyone that you would think of in the past that would be able to take care of your old paradigm, that might be able to come and help you out when things have gone wrong, are not available. They're taking care of the change. We got to be like Ridley here, and we've got to accept that we got to do this ourselves. And the way that we do this ourselves is we select the right capabilities aligned to the future, and we move towards that more progressive state slowly with optimal outcomes as part of the planning process. Next slide. Like I said, 80-something% of the folks that we talk to say that digital transformation necessitates an adjustment to the traditional, AKA perimeter-based security strategy. 8 out of 10 folks that you talk to in security will say this old way of doing things doesn't work anymore. If you want to be more digital, you want to transform, you want to look at 21st century outcomes for businesses, and you want to be cloud, remote, all those other things, you have got to move into a different approach. You have got to basically accept that this is the way that things are going to go. And you've got to leverage capabilities from providers, which will help you solve these problems as you move into that new space. You don't just take all your old stuff and shove it into the cloud and think you've got it right, because you'll get it wrong. This is where the benefit comes from leveraging solutions and capabilities that will enable you to do things in a more effective, more secure manner. Most agree the network perimeter is no longer defensible. Today's technology ecosystem, which is made more complex by digital transformation, necessitates adjustments to traditional security strategies. You are going to be in the cloud. Why not leverage cloud security solutions and capabilities from providers that know how to do it right and are willing to bolt in things to your infrastructure that will make it more movable for you? Next slide. David, you want to start talking about the TEI?
Absolutely. All right, well, terrific. Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Chase, of course. I also appreciate the slide visuals, very appropriate, I do say, for the month of October. So for the remainder of today's session, I just want to talk through Forrester's total economic impact study, obviously, that we conducted on Armor Anywhere, and some of the key research results of that research. But before we get there, I want to first take a couple of minutes to quickly talk through the way that we conduct these studies and what our end output looks like. Now, to understand what the Forrester total economic impact methodology is, I want to first take a look at what makes a good business case. So the vast majority, or 90% of IT decision makers now say that they find value in a business case when making a buying decision. But when you look at existing business cases and their methodologies, you find that the scope is quite limited. So TCO, everyone knows what TCO is, looks only at IT cost versus cost savings, for example, right? But they don't look at the business impacts of a buying decision. Then you have ROI, which takes it a little bit further by including the benefits and costs of the business lines. And then TEI, total economic impact, incorporates ROI, but then takes it even further by looking at the flexibility of a solution, or what we call sort of the future strategic impact, while also taking into account potential risks of a solution. All right, next. Now, to understand visually what that looks like, right, you can see here how the TEI takes into account the benefits, costs, the flexibility associated with an investment decision, and then parses all of those facets through a risk layer to output the most realistic business case estimates. Next. All right, so with this methodology in mind, we go through a number of steps in our research process to ensure the accuracy and relevancy of our results. So we started by working, in this case, with Armor, to better understand Armor Anywhere and its value proposition, and form some hypotheses around what customers could be experiencing and what the economics of their investment decision might look like. All right, then we went out and we conducted interviews with 4 existing customers of Armor Anywhere to test these hypotheses, and then gather both quantitative and qualitative data to feed into our analysis. And then after that, we create what's called a composite organization, which is essentially used to reflect the aggregated data that we collected during our interviews. And through this composite organization, we build a financial model and ultimately a written case study. All right, next. So now I want to take a couple of minutes to go through a couple of the most salient points to take away from the study. But before we get into it, I just want to caveat that the best way to grasp the contents of the study and understand the impact of Armor Anywhere is to obviously read the full study, right? And while we can talk about some of the outputs today at a high level, I still highly encourage you to at least skim through the study so that you understand the context behind some of these numbers that we go through today. All right, so now earlier I mentioned that we conducted interviews with 4 customers and created a representative composite organization based on their aggregated characteristics. And that became the core of our analysis. So those interviews interviewed companies spanned diverse industries, right? So these included professional services, healthcare technology, and travel. and ranged in size of Armor deployment as well. So from as few as 50 agents deployed to as many as 1,200. Now, Forrester's composite organization based on these customers generates 200 million in annual revenues with an internal security team of 4. It then deploys Armor agents across 120 server endpoints, which are spread across hybrid on-premises and public cloud infrastructure. All right, next. So given the in-depth research that we did on these customers and the resulting financial analysis, what were some of the key outcomes, right? So first, from an ROI perspective, which I think is fascinating here, we found that over 3 years, the decision to implement and deploy Armor across the enterprise was obviously a very beneficial one, as you can see here, right? So with an overall return on investment of 774%. And you'll see that this is driven by, of course, substantial benefits, but also a very low cost base, which includes really simple agent-based licensing and a minimal amount of internal effort required for deployment and ongoing optimization. So one organization likened the deployment process to an easy button, quote unquote, that allowed them to turn on a number of security capabilities such as intrusion detection, response, and log correlation and retention. And as Ryan alluded to, right, it's all API based. So all of these functions are kind of turned on at the switch of a button. Next slide, please. Now, to understand why Armor had the impact that it did, for these customers, it's important to first understand the challenges that these organizations faced in their previous environments. So you'll see that all the following challenges here are actually very closely related, right? And they all have to do with a rapidly changing landscape, which Chase talked about in depth here, both in terms of cybersecurity technology and processes, as well as the regulatory landscape and knowing what's needed from a compliance perspective. So all organizations, particularly those in highly regulated industries, found it difficult to keep up with changing regulations, and even more difficult to find the right talent that could bring together the people, the processes, and the technology needed to meet various compliance standards and keep their customer data safe ultimately. As one organization pointed out, someone who knows firewalls isn't necessarily going to be your incident response person or your access control person. So providing a robust in-house cybersecurity program means having to invest in not just the cybersecurity technology, but also the numerous security administrators, the personnel, et cetera, each with a different set of domain expertise. All right, so next. With Armor, organizations benefited not just from a set of compliance-ready security technologies and features, but also from having a team behind them that could really administer and run these technologies and essentially act as an extended security operations center. So this meant for these customers, everything from both automated and human-assisted alerting and intelligence needed to identify and eliminate threats in the environment, to having access to an expert team that could interface directly with auditors and help these organizations achieve compliance readiness. And in achieving specific compliance standards, some organizations were even able to expand their operations to serve an incremental set of customers, which had a significant top-line impact to the business as well. Great, next. So we quantified some of the most important metrics in this slide here. And as you can see, Armor impacted everything from an organization's TCO, obviously, right, to the efficiency of its security operations, to then also its top-line revenues. So some organizations benefited from, for example, a roughly 5% increase in total addressable market, just by being able to transact with more customers after achieving regulatory compliance. This was more apparent, obviously, with organizations in highly regulated industries whose customers carefully evaluated the organization's compliance certifications before entering into a B2B partnership. So a lot of the times these mandates come directly from the customers to the vendors rather than the other way around. Organizations also saw a substantial reduction in their overall security TCO as they were able to reduce their expenditure on security point solutions by roughly 64%. And this is because with each agent-based deployment, these organizations were able to acquire not just one, but several security features at a single price point, which allowed them to replace any number of redundant solutions, right? And so these included, things like individual threat intelligence tools to the third-party log management software. Now, finally, from an operational standpoint, organizations also saw an overall 90% reduction in the number of false positive alerts in their environments because of the accuracy of alerting through Armor. So one of the organizations that we spoke to said that in the past, false positives would be as common as a coin flip. And with Armor, that went down to under 5% of all alerts. So as you can see, a pretty substantial improvement in accuracy. And beyond just the numbers, right? And equally, if not more important benefit of this is reducing alert fatigue and empowering internal security teams to actually investigate their alerts instead of ignoring them, knowing that there's probably a good reason why those alerts weren't whitelisted or and ultimately persisted through Armor's filter. All right, next. Great. So that's all I have for you guys today. So now I'll hand it back off to Ryan so that he can open up the floor for some Q&A.
Excellent. Thank you again, David and Dr. Cunningham for joining us today. At this time, we will transition to the question and answer portion of the webinar. If you have not already submitted your questions, please feel free to use the question function to send them that way. While you're submitting your questions, I do want to ask all attendees to participate in the quick survey that'll be sent after the broadcast, where you can provide us with your feedback. Also, if you think about a question once the broadcast is closed, you can still submit those questions in the post-broadcast survey as you rate our webinar for the day, and we will get back to you with answers. If you'd like to attend any other upcoming events, sign up at armor.com/events. And once again, at the end of this, we will send an edited recording and the actual total economic impact assessment conducted by Forrester to all attendees after this call. With that being said, I do see some questions. So let's jump into the first question right away. This question is, I'm about to go through a PCI audit. How can I prepare my company for that audit with Armor or any other company? And Dr. Chase, how about you answer that one for us?
Well, I mean, I think really what you should wrap your kind of head around is that going through a PCI audit, you may know this, is not necessarily an easy thing to do. It's kind of like going to the dentist repeatedly because they're going to go through everything you've got and really look for the fine tooth comb sort of approach to data that could be PCI related, and oftentimes you'll find things that you weren't aware of. My suggestion would be, and I actually worked at Armor for quite a while back in the day. I would leverage somebody that has those capabilities inside of those infrastructures that can help you validate the audit process before you get through it, because it can make things much faster. Most of the time when we talk to organizations that are starting to look at having an audit done, they find a lot of value in having a partner or somebody else help them do the PCI stuff because it does require a lot of insight. It does require a lot of experience, and to be perfectly frank, you're probably better off just doing what the business does and having someone line up the PCI side of it for you.
Appreciate that answer. And yes, Armor is certainly has those capabilities and that expertise in-house. We also have customer-facing compliance resources that can help you interface with your auditor or go through that prep process. So definitely agree with Chase on that one. So the next question was, how can I actually determine what my total cost of ownership would be or could be both pre and post Armor? And I'll go ahead and answer that one. We actually have a total cost of ownership audit that we go through with each potential customer, and you can actually sign up right on our homepage to get one for free. So if you would like to figure out what your total cost of ownership is, figure out where the spend and risk in that spend is related to your current security program, and also see some of the benefits of what Armor can provide to you, please go to our website and sign up today. The next one I will also address to you, Chase. So if you were looking to replace your security point solutions with a security platform, what are the two most important aspects an organization should look for when they're looking for more of that all-in-one solution or that platform-based approach to security?
Well, one of the things I would look for is the SLAs that are tied to the solutions that you're going to get from a provider. Are there specific SLAs? Is that provider going to be able to say, if this occurs, we will be able to respond to you this fast, and this is the outcome you should expect? Because I want to know that the money that I'm investing and the time I'm investing is going to equal a positive outcome. Because I mean, the reality of it is something's going to go wrong somewhere, and you want to be able to have metrics that'll let you know what you're doing is validated and useful. And then the second thing I would say is really think about where you're going to be lining up in the future. If you're not there yet, you're going to be more cloud. And if you don't have the human capital to actually do this work, it makes a lot of sense to partner with someone that can help you take that load off. You know, there's this thing about we have a lack of human capital in the space when it comes to IR and response and managing cloud and secure infrastructure and whatnot. And while that can be contentious, I mean, the reality of it is most businesses should be doing whatever the business does. They shouldn't be trying to be security operations groups. So that's where I would really move into, is looking at the future side of this. What technologies am I, going to have, and then can that partner take the load off of my group so that we can do what we do for business and not necessarily be a security provider. We just want to, if we make candy, make candy. Let the security provider take care of the security stuff.
Excellent, appreciate that. And a quick follow-up to that. So as you're seeing people make that transition to security platforms because either they don't have the resources or the cloud is changing kind of so fast that they have to worry about running their business and not some of the areas where they're not domain experts. Can you talk a little bit more about that transition and why platforms are helpful for dealing with that evolution? Because I think sometimes we're trapped in this dilemma of how do I continually keep pace with innovation that digital transformation allows, because I have all these new cloud services or things that I can leverage within my company. But that does, to y'all's points earlier in the webinar today, that changes what you have to protect, how you have to protect it. So just talk to me a little bit about how companies such as Armor help you keep pace with that pace of innovation that we're dealing with, given all of the digital transformation in today's world.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very difficult problem to solve because we are moving so fast. I think really the benefit that comes from this, and the study, validated this, in my opinion, is where you move to is going to be most beneficial to the organization when there are clear business benefits and outcomes, when you can say, if I do this, I will save money here, which will help me generate revenue there, and the bottom line gets better for everyone. And if you're able to say, like, look, I can't possibly keep up with all this stuff that's coming my way because that's not what I do. However, if I can partner up with someone that is specifically their job in the space, including things like making sure that you're PCI compliant or HIPAA compliant or high trust compliant, and that they're providing you technology based on where you're going anyway, there are massive benefits to that. And lastly, what you're really trying to get out of this is not, you're not trying to constantly ice skate uphill against the technology onslaught. You want someone that can be in lockstep with you, that is providing you those capabilities as you continue to move into that space. Where this is where we're kind of all going. I mean, it can be as simple as thinking about, cutting the cord at your home for the TV. I don't know anything from my perspective about, the difference between DirecTV and what I get from Comcast. I know that Comcast is more sort of aligned with what the future of streaming looks like and those type of things, and it's cheaper. So I'm just going to let Comcast take over for me, and I'll punt on DirecTV. And that's not a knock or an endorsement, but that's just a realization of they know what they're doing. They have the services. They can provide that to me. Why would I try and figure that out for myself? Let them do it, and I'll just basically take the benefit.
Excellent. I think that provides an excellent segue into our next question, which was somebody had recently moved their data and applications to AWS from their on-prem environment. They also have compliance mandates such as PCI that they must adhere to. So the question is, what minimum security and compliance requirements or technology do I need to have to make sure my data and apps are secure in the public cloud? And I'll go ahead and answer one. I think that it harkens back to something I was saying at the beginning of the presentation, which is There are certainly tools and feature capabilities that we think are uniquely important to have as it relates to the cloud because of the cloud environment. Those things include cloud workload protection, which really focuses on that infrastructure protection, the workloads running on that infrastructure, and some of the host-based security controls such as file integrity monitoring, intrusion detection, vulnerability management, etc. But just having tools like that in place is half the battle. You have to be able to make those tools work on your behalf, and you have to be able to evolve your technology set if your environment changes. So while having a cloud workload protection platform today is really important, if that cloud workload protection platform doesn't evolve to protect containers as the next generation of workloads, then that tool is not working on your behalf. And once again, it's about you focusing on your business, as Dr. Cunningham said multiple times before, and leaving it to the experts that have that operational experience to evolve the platform and work on your behalf in these areas that are ever changing. But in addition to cloud workload protection, we often see SIEM, SOAR, SOC solutions and capabilities. One of the benefits of the Armor Anywhere solution is that we do have SIEM and SOAR capabilities from a technology component perspective that are included as part of the platform. That way you don't have to buy your own SIEM, build out your own SOAR, manage all of the correlation rules and playbooks associated with those products. But instead, Armor's security operations team and our security engineering resources can help you monitor that environment and respond to those things quickly. So those are also important. And then having the most up-to-date threat intelligence, so you are kind of aware and abreast of what threat actors are doing, is incredibly important. But it goes beyond the tools. Like David said, it's also about the processes you put in place, the operational impacts of those tools and that TCO conversation, and actually having the people to respond. And that's why it's so important for us to supplement people's SOCs, because we do have these talent resources within the industry today. We have one more question, it looks like, but certainly if there are more, keep them coming in. And this question is somewhat related to the above, but it is related to COVID-19. And now that so many employees work remotely, what additional technologies or capabilities do I need to have in place to protect those workloads? And I think Dr. Cunningham kind of talked about it, as we do live in this world where monkeys are using chainsaws and everybody kind of got forced into a zombie work from home apocalypse. And IT and security and DevOps teams have had to keep up with what do we need to do next, how do we do this. And read a really good quote from, I forget the exact person, but they said that COVID did more for digital transformation in 3 months than what we would have probably seen in 5 years. So now that we're 5 years in the future related to digital transformation, I think it's really starting with the realization that your employees are that linchpin and will be more important. Analysts say that by 2020, this year, it's going to be 95% issues are due to a misconfiguration or something that's due to an employee's fault, and that'll be 99% by 2025. And so how do you put the proper protections in place, whether it's EDR to allow you to implement endpoint protection on everybody's laptops, desktops, mobile phones, tablet servers, the different ways in which they're accessing your corporate data. Maybe it's implementing cloud access security broker solutions that really enforce security policy as it relates to how data is accessed within all of our SaaS applications today. And then security awareness training. This is Security Awareness Month, which is an important reminder and plug here. However, it is important to do this year round, whether it is phishing training, just security awareness, enforcing policy control. Security is a team sport, and it cannot happen without the buy-in of the entire company, particularly in today's mobile perimeterless world that we live in. That does look like it is all the questions. So once again, I would like to say thank you to our audience for their participation. And a big thank you to David and Dr. Chase Cunningham from Forrester and all of the research that Forrester did. We also appreciate them allowing us to share in these results with the world. Obviously, this is a very exciting study for Armor, and it aligns with a lot of the value we see day to day that we provide our customers. But it's great to get that third-party validation of that and to see that impact in real life with our customer base. So if there's no more questions, we will end today's webinar. But once again, appreciate everybody's time today. The recap of the webinar, the video, and the report will be sent out afterwards. Thank you for your time today, and we appreciate it.